websites and the social networks of the Presidency of the Republic, of the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and UNODC Colombia. For those who would like to attend this event with simultaneous interpretation, you can find this in the tab of the videos in YouTube of UNODC in Colombia through the transmission in English and Portuguese. Now, we will give the word to the Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Marta Lucia. Good morning. I would like to welcome you all to the Palacio San Carlos, to all those who are accompanying us in face to face and virtual. First of all, Dr. President Duque Marquez and the National Units Against UNODC, Gara Wali, welcome to Colombia. And also Pierre Lapac, he's also the rep for Colombia in UNODC, which we were trying to carry out this time for almost a year and some change. And today it's becomes a reality. I would also like to greet Ms. Marta Correa, head of cabinets in the presidency and of the Superior Council of the Judicial, and also like to greet all the different ambassadors, heads of diplomatic missions, and all our peers from the governor, the Interior Minister Daniel Palacios, Minister of Defense Diego Molano, Minister of Justice Rizzo Ruiz, and Diego Mesa, and Environment Minister Carlos Corres, and the different reps of the international organisms that are accredited here in Colombia, and the different members of the Representation Office of the United Nations against, well, UNODC, who are here gathered and accompanying us, and the different panelists from Colombia and international ones who are also accompanying us, different reps who make part of different governments. It is a pleasure for me to give this welcome into this event that is so important, that we agree with Pierre to carry out here in Colombia because of multiple reasons. Because Colombia, of course, is one of those countries who have had this very difficult experience, which has been painful, and which means the drugs, the connection with different activities that are unlawful, and the sacrifice that we have to carry out during many years. And of course, obviously, because it's a country that has the moral authority to say when the state or when the society is doing the decision making to confront these normal things, and we have results. And we know that this is kind of business that, or deals that have been taking a larger size and creating more threats and a greater threat. And this is the reason why we think it is so important to count with the executive director of the United Nations, the UNODC, and is really a necessity to give a view on what this means to the different countries in Latin America and the Caribbean that are represented here. As I mentioned priorly, we have the experience of many years in Colombia. For more than 30 years, we discovered the relationship that we had with drug trafficking and those terrorist groups that have been funded with drug trafficking, and that at the end, of course, they have had different moments and had the possibility to put it on put the security of our country under threat and the stability of our country. And for this reason, we have this all this knowledge and learnings and experience on so many things that work and other things that have not worked so well. But we know that this is a world problem that is affecting us in a very notorious way in our region. So that's why it is so important to count with all the representatives of different organisms or bodies from the region. And we know that it is necessary to go from diagnosis. Well, the truth is that in our initial greetings, before we got to this point, we were speaking to the director of the United Nations of many diagnoses that we have carried out in the past. And there is one that is very important that the World Bank did when Bob Selig was presiding this organism. And just in this study of the World Bank, we were showing the links of drug trafficking and all those Latin American gangs or in Central America and the Caribbean. And this study has been done already for the past 15 years, and we have been just left in the view and diagnosis, and we have had very little action plans, very few action plans that have been efficient in reality. So I believe that here we can do a difference. This is a moment that we're making a call to for a more efficient cooperation, for a regional cooperation, as for a global one that can produce better outcomes. And we also know that all these links of drug trafficking and all those illegal activities like illegal mining, of course, also the smuggling that also affects our legal economy in our country, also creates serious problems in the defense and national security matters, which are also threats that today are transcending our borders and require this international action commitment or engagement. And there's a lot of evidence on all the linking that we have through drug trafficking and the trafficking of humans and the illicit traffic of arms and weapons and different ways that they do the money laundering for drug traffickers, where we need an international cooperation that has to be very efficient. And we also know that how much drug trafficking money is also invested in this economy and in real estate. We also have this challenge of this crypto coins becoming a very favorable scenario for this money laundering, and this is the reason why we require a very efficient cooperation among the authorities that obviously have to oversee the borderlines, and also through those authorities that are with the functions of avoiding all this money laundering. In the case of Colombia, we have a very broad or ample experience where we have a lot to share with all these neighboring countries, and we also have to always be clear on innovation that they have been developing linked to drug trafficking, because they have been becoming sophisticated. And for this reason, we also have to achieve to be sophisticated with the state capabilities and also the joint capabilities of our states. When we have a better cooperation in our country, we are quite aware of all the damage or harm that this drug trafficking have done to the environment. I'm pretty sure that the president is going to be speaking about this topic, not in depth, and this is the reason I don't want to speak about it. But this is a field that has great importance to be able to achieve the cooperation among our countries now that we have all these actions because of the climate change, and these become a priority in the international agenda. This is the reason this is also important to have a regional action plan that's going to be concrete, that will allow us to protect this environment in a better way that has been so affected because of deforestation that is occurring, to be able to plant or harvest heroin and cocaine with different plants, which is poppy, one that is for heroin. And we also know that this action plan must cover something that is being referred to repeatedly in this Latin American strategy, or the real opportunities for youth, because we also know that the youth in many countries do not have the real opportunity of education, of work, of entrepreneurship, and we have to be able to exchange these experiences on what is working in each one of our countries, to be able to share these opportunities to our youth and to avoid these youth people to be a part of these mafias, these international groups of drug traffickers. The main purpose here of these groups are the youth. First, to become addicted in consumption, and then second, instrumental in the drug trafficking business. Such, well, as far to use them to do the drug trafficking, to do the money laundering in different ways. And for this reason, we have to be able to achieve to have national, territorial, regional, and global strategies that can involve all this for the permanent risk that our youth is running in this field. For this reason, we consider that it's a very good time to present this strategical vision of the UNODC for the Latin America and the Caribbean. We made part of many conventions with the United Nations. We have the Convention Against Organized Transnational Crime. We have protocols to avoid the uh, traffic of humans and weapons, particles to avoid the money laundering, the Convention of Palermo. And the truth is that we have to see how we can use all these international instruments to be able to define some of those concrete actions that at the regional tier will allow us to work in a better way against this drug trafficking, against all these illegal activities that are accompanied by drug trafficking and that puts our citizens or people security in threat, and that can also put us our democracy strategy in risk and our governments of our countries. So for this reason, we're very happy to have you here in Colombia accompanying us. And of course, now we will listen to all the possibilities that we have been proposing from UNODC and the way we can achieve all these regional actions or these regional plans. And now that we have this regional office of UNODC, because the truth is that we believe that this is transcending on the limits, international limits, and our country has all the experience to share. We also know that this is a very valuable asset to have this regional office nowadays here in our country. Thank you very much for choosing Colombia, and of course, you're welcome.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vice President and Ms. Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now we will give the word to the United Nations Rep, Ms. Garawali.
Your Excellency, Mr. Ivan Duque, Marquez, President of Colombia, Your Excellency, Ms. Marta Lucía Ramirez, Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for today's event. I'm honored to launch the new UNODC Strategic Vision for Latin America and the Caribbean 2022-2025 in the presence of His Excellency President Duque and Her Excellency Vice President Marta Lucía Ramirez and representatives of Latin American and the Caribbean governments and key stakeholders in the region. I'm very honored to be here with you in this historical room in this beautiful building. This is my first mission to the region as UNODC Executive Director, and it is truly an honor to be in Colombia, where we have our largest footprint worldwide. I would like to start by congratulating President Duque and his administration for the management of the complex scenario posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, a crisis that has left the region and the world struggling with numerous social and economic challenges. In this context, it is also important to highlight the efforts made in the implementation of the peace agreement. I joined the UN Secretary General, who was here last November, in reiterating the unwavering support of the United Nations to this investment in peace that can serve as an example for the whole world. Today marks the renewal of UNODC's commitment to serving the Latin American and the Caribbean people by working with their governments and other relevant stakeholders in addressing many of the challenges that the region has been facing for years and that the pandemic has deepened. Persistent inequality, unequal access to services, lack of opportunities for youth who represent 20% of the region's total population, unequal access to justice, which contributes to perceptions of prevalent corruption and impunity and undermines stability, and high levels of lethal and non-lethal violence, with approximately 37% of homicides worldwide registered in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 25% of women in the region being victims of gender-based violence. The COVID-19 crisis has served as a wake-up call, as the pandemic has led to a historical economic downturn in the region, exacerbating the already existing vulnerabilities of the most disadvantaged groups and widening the gap towards the achievement of the SDGs. These particular circumstances make UNODC's mandate more relevant than ever. But it's not enough to be relevant. There's a need for this relevance to be translated into action that accelerates ongoing work and maximizes impact. Latin America and the Caribbean is a dynamic, resilient, and diverse region with enormous promise. It has a leading voice in international policy and is the cradle of numerous experiences and best practices that have been replicated within and outside the region. It is our shared responsibility to ensure that it achieves its potential. The document we are presenting today provides a tailored regional approach for the implementation of UNODC's Global Strategy 2022-2025, as it aims to prevent and address diverse challenges posed by illicit drugs, organized crime, and corruption, including emerging threats related to new psychoactive substances, maritime security, cybercrime, and crimes that affect the environment. The strategic vision for Latin America and the Caribbean will be an overarching tool that shapes UNODC's structure and interventions in the region to more coherently, cohesively, and efficiently address the 4 priority areas identified by member states and relevant stakeholders, namely, taking action against the world's drug problem. 2, combating transnational organized crime. 3, countering corruption. And 4, enhancing crime prevention and criminal justice. Under these priority areas, UNODC has placed particular emphasis on improving crime prevention and access to justice through responsive, people-centered law enforcement and criminal justice systems, as well as by fostering more accountable and transparent institutions. These are key elements of any response that is capable of ameliorating long-standing structural inequalities and achieving safety, security, human rights, and development in the region. Reducing crime, violence, and corruption are also prerequisites for empowering women and girls and enabling the region's young people to access opportunities and play a key role in working towards a better and safer future. As President Duque highlighted during his intervention at the World Youth Forum, recently held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, youth ideas, talents, and leadership are instrumental in a world undergoing rapid changes. In line with the UN reform process, spearheaded by the Secretary General, the strategic vision for Latin America and the Caribbean places people at the center of UNODC's work and addresses the security development nexus through actions that recognizes security as a multidimensional goal that is linked to development and requires investments in diverse fields. These include crime prevention, criminal justice, and appropriate sentencing laws, among others. UNODC will also engage more vigorously with other UN entities. We will work regionally, including through the UN Sustainable Development Group and the Development Coordination Office, as well as nationally through the UN country teams and the Sustainable Development Cooperation Frameworks and thematic working groups. With a view to keeping this vision and its related initiatives as relevant and impactful as possible, UNODC will assess its implementation on an annual basis and adjust as needed in coordination with the region and its actors. And Ms. Vice President, rest assured that this will be followed by an action plan for the region and an action plan for each country in the region. I'm proud to note that this document is the result of a consultative process spanning 1.5 years, during which governments, donors, and other important stakeholders from a wide array of sectors, including civil society and academia, shared their views and experiences through surveys and in-depth bilateral consultations. The partnerships built over 3 decades of joint work with the region and its stakeholders are of utmost importance. For UNODC, and we really believe that the new vision will offer a platform to take our cooperation to the next level. The support of Latin American and the Caribbean member states, the donor community, and a wide array of partners from different sectors has allowed UNODC to deliver $102 million in 2020-2021 in the region, despite the many restrictions introduced as a response to the pandemic. For this, we are most grateful. Through the new strategic vision, we aim at further boosting South-South cooperation and resource mobilization by bringing relevant expertise from other regions, but also by leveraging regional expertise and experience. Actions speak louder than words, and UNODC has taken the first step in the implementation of the new strategic vision for Latin America with the reprofiling of our UNODC country office in Colombia as the regional office for the Andean region and the Southern Cone. The new regional office will continue to lead UNODC operations in Colombia, and it will be responsible for the oversight and coordination of UNODC operations in Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Ecuador, Paraguay, Peru, and Uruguay. The creation of a regional office will allow for a more coordinated and effective approach to operations, partnership development, and communication. It also follows on the strategic vision's focus on promoting a more harmonious, consistent, and coordinated regional decision-making process capable of meeting the growing demands of stakeholders and building on existing expertise and capacities in the region. By concentrating our efforts and resources with a regional focus, we can be more ambitious in supporting governments to address challenges affecting their countries and achieve greater impact in Latin America and the Caribbean. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, UNODC is committed to working with you and the countries of the region to bring this vision to life and translate it into concrete initiatives and action plans. Together, we can ensure that every single action taken has a positive impact on the lives of people in Latin America and the Caribbean. We depend on the active engagement of the region and donors to work with us to promote justice and build accountable institutions that can help restore trust, increase opportunities, and fulfill the promise of more inclusive progress, leaving no one behind. And let me try to do this in Spanish. Permítanme concluir expresando.
Allow me to wrap up expressing my profound gratitude for the support of all the member states and strategic partners for the development and launch of the new vision of this region. Additionally, I would like to transmit my warm and sincere thanks to the government of Colombia, President Duque, and Vice President Ramirez for organizing this event, and the warm welcome that they provided me in my first, but definitely not last, mission to this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for your words, Mrs. Wally. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up next, the President of the Republic of Colombia, Dr. Ivan Duque Martes, will share his opening remarks. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to our Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Martha Lucia Ramirez de Rincon. A very warm welcome to the Executive Secretary of UNODC, Gara Wali. A warm welcome to Dr. Pierla Pac, representative of UNODC in Colombia. And a warm welcome to all the distinguished members of the diplomatic missions, to the ambassadors, to President of the Superior Judiciary Council, Jorge Luis Trujillo, Dr. Maria Paula, Chief of the Cabinet, to Mr. Palacios, to the Minister of Justice, Wilson Ruiz Orjuela. A warm greeting to the Minister of National Defense, Diego Molano Aponte. A warm welcome to the Ministry of Energy, Diego Mesa. To the Minister, the Environmental Ministry, Carlos Eduardo Scaff. And a warm welcome to the delegation of UNODC. And also to the Delegate Prosecutor of Financial Crimes, Luz Angela Bahamon. I would also like to greet the Procurator of the Republic. Dear Dr. Wali, it's a pleasure to have you here in Colombia. Here with us presenting this regional strategy, but also elevating the UNODC Colombian office to a regional level. Without a doubt, today we are facing many new challenges in a globalized world that is interdependent, and that presents immense weaknesses. I mentioned this last week in my greeting to the diplomatic team. Today, we are in Bika. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. With many aspects related to international affairs. But it's necessary to highlight that one of the most named conventions or treaties and with greatest participation in recent history around the world has been the International Convention Against Drugs. A piece of collaboration, international collaboration, created in the 70s. And since then, it has maintained a roadmap for us to confront this scourge, which continues to affect our families, our youth, and continues to be one of the biggest challenges around the world. Without a doubt, that convention and its development have motivated countries to have a permanent agenda to fight against that scourge and its byproducts, its derivatives, because a byproduct of drug trafficking is an entire criminal chain that daily represents challenges to our authorities, to our police forces, our military, and without a doubt, to our families as the nucleus and heart of our countries. That's why to see that UNODC is renewing its strategies is to tell us that it's not a lost cause. And contrary to the discourses that many use in electoral campaigns, when an analysis is performed, what we should be asking ourselves is where would humanity be if those decisions, coordinated decisions, had not been made on time? We have also seen how for many decades, important efforts have been put forth in terms of prevention and actions against these crimes. We have seen how over these decades the police apparatus has been reinforced to pursue these crimes related to drug trafficking. And we have also seen how UNODC has expanded its skill sets and its capabilities until becoming an international organization coordinating all our efforts in the fight against drugs, crimes, cyber crimes, environmental crimes, and also new modalities of criminal activity. In this sense, I would like to reference some global issues and then go down or ground it to Colombia. In regards to crimes, cooperation and international coordination are key. They are key today. We need to have better frameworks to fight against corruption, which would imply that internationally we need to have cooperation to punish those that are committing the crimes and those that are supporting them. We need to standardize our regulations and norms to find these business fronts that are sponsoring carousels of contractual carousels so that they can steal public resources. Real-time cooperation is an urgent need. We have had important progress, but clearly much more is needed to break away with the money laundering chains related to those crimes. We also need to agree on a proposal presented by Colombia about 3 years and a half by the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Carlos Holmes Trujillo, to have an equivalent of an international court against corruption, focused mainly on fighting against corporations that sponsor these practices.
To seek some progress in this type of nature takes some time. We know that these are some ideas that can take a long time for maturity. We wish they wouldn't take so long, but we must understand that the world needs some explorational, investigational, and punishing capabilities of all these companies that have been doing the money laundering and for all the type of these crimes that are linked to this. The second aspect that I would like to highlight is the emerging need of be taken on this conversation on the fight against drugs. in September of 2018, in the framework of the United Nations Assembly, we had a meeting where more than 114 countries gathered, and we signed the declaration where we were convinced, and we still are convinced, that we must perfect, make these measures perfect to fight against this drug trafficking crime. But we know that this has been sophisticated now. It's not just to fight against cocaine or heroin as those strong drugs, but we are seeing a very dangerous methamphetamines crimes in which are threatening our youth. And when we see the presence of these drugs, which have been the extension that have been awakened by the pandemic in 2020, we can consider that it was one of those years with the greatest expansion of the consumption of new drugs, perhaps also fostered by those situations of desperation, isolation, that were very difficult to have these policies. But we also were able to see the sophistication of this drug trafficking market that has always been consolidating through these encrypted systems that are in virtual platforms. To fight against these crimes is we are obliged to do, and we must. And they would only have a discussion space if they had a world consensus on this matter, but we do not have it. And for this reason, to address this conversation with legalizations in these moments where the world is facing these crimes, we must be able to see the hesitations of these public policies to fight against this scourge. It is not good to refer to this word war, but to the continuous fight that a society deserves. So drugs that annihilate and the youth, the life of youth, would not make part of this conversation with the possibility of becoming something of the day-to-day life. And I will stress myself here, just very few families in our countries like ours have the possibility to face drug addiction situation of one of their loved ones, to be able to take them to have disintoxication, rehab treatments, or other type of procedures to recover the youth. But when this drama of the drugs touches those low income families, and we have these planted in their hearts, and a person that is young that does not have so many opportunities, the poverty of these families are going to triple, and that is evident in the countries that are under development. We would also like to annotate that the world is requiring one of these regional strategies, the way it has been planned to be able to fight cyber crimes, the theft of identities, the constant intent of manipulation to the government, which is even more dangerous, the insurgence of these external factors in the electoral processes, or must also have punishing frameworks. We cannot leave this environment crimes aside, because today these deforestation crimes, like the one of the wildlife destruction, the affectation of aquifers, constitute one of these more crimes. But we cannot trick ourselves. One of these, all these countries that are under development, they are not punished, and they have very high things that prevent these punishings. And this reason to put this discussion on the table on how to strengthen the punishing regimen for these environmental crimes must also be an effort that we must have progress on from the regional office. And we will also like to begin to speak about Colombia under this context. Today, we are seeing the presence of UNODC in our country, and where we recognize the efforts of our nation in the matter of fight against corruption. These 3 years and a half of our government, we can say with pride that we have put forward this law that forces all these high officials of the state make their tax income tax refunds known to the people, so we can know their patrimony, their incomes, and their expenses. Also, We have also progress on this law that makes them to have this interest conflicts of the high officials of the state. So we have gone forth with these standards so we can have a greater publicity on the accountability, and we have achieved that in Colombia. We can have house arrest for those who have been punished for corruption cases. Here we can add a new law of publicity that allows us to raise these corporates and to introduce these punishments to those companies who are sponsoring these corruption crimes. And we have gone ahead with legislation of this so we can stop these contractual carousels and to have the capabilities to see this and to guarantee the transparency in these contractual processes. We have gone ahead with a new administrative code and in the controllership of the nation that allows us to have control with commitment in real time to avoid all these affectations of the state arcs. These laws that are so important are the greatest standard programs that have gone ahead in a government against the fight of corruption. And the matters too of fight against crime, the efforts that we have gone ahead with by the police and by all the public force allows us to say that within 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021, we have achieved to have the consolidated aggregated death rate even up to the August perspective is the lowest in the last decades, and we have the kidnapping rate that is the lowest since we have these statistics collaborating that Colombia is strengthening their institutionality and that it is striking all these crimes in a very strong way. We must add also that we have achieved the greatest drug seizures registered in Colombia to date, more than 700 tons will be seized this year. Last year we had almost 700. There were 670 tons seized, and we have a trend that is been increasing in this type of actions. But also the destruction of more than 5,600 laboratories for the processing of cocaine were headed last year. Here we can sum up that we also have a peace and legal policy that allows us to reach these territories and combine the security work with the social investment. We have put 16 territory development plans in March to cover 670 municipalities that have been stricken by these crimes. And we have seen these villages in these 670 municipalities and the 6 million Colombians that live there so they can be covered under these plans that are long term. But we must always call these things by their name. We are confronting these armed, illegal, and terrorist groups that existed before and that are still existing after the signature of these accords, peace accords of the Pelusos, the Caparros, the Puntilleros, the El Clan del Golfo, ELN, the FARCs, dissidents, among others. But we have been able to achieve to dismantle all these structures of the Clan del Golfo, Pelusos, and Carpachos, and capturing the most dangerous drug trafficker that our country has known since the Pablo Escobar times, alias Otinel, aka Otinel, which we are going to be extraditing very soon. But we're also committed with the Supreme Court. And we are clear that are the FARC dissidencies and ELN, among others, that have been behind the murder of all these people who are in the reincorporation process. But we have been seeing how these symbols come out, and we are not going to stop these efforts because the peace with legality is still projecting success in this territory, and also to face all those people who are pretending to quiet this voice or put this voice in silence. We must act upon this with all determination. Today, this peace with legality requires the greatest commitment of the public force, and we're achieving this, increasing our force and having presence in different parts of the country. The challenge is not easy, but the conviction and evidence that we now have today, and is validated by Dr. Wally, to have the presence of Colombia in the development of the peace accord with legality, as Dr. Guterres said, shows the resilience and capabilities of our country in the matters of the environmental crimes. We have gone ahead with new legislations, a new law that allows us to have behaviors against this natural patrimony of our country under security law that for the first time in our country gave us the scope of strategical heritage or patrimony for these assets, and that's what is an obligation for our public force to guarantee their security. And we have gone ahead also that this year will be quite large. 30% of the Colombian territory, the maritime one and the continental one, will be declared as protected area, anticipating the goal of 2030 now in 2022, which also commits our country in the protection of this biodiversity even more when we are the second country when we have the most biodiversity. And of course, it's clear that we must also recognize the efforts of taking the Artemisa campaign that has allowed us to reduce the deforestation rate. Just last year was a 34%, and this year we expect a more than 30% in addition. But also taking this Artemisa campaign to the ocean to fight against the fishing, illegal fishing, which is equivalent to the deforestation in our seas that are threatening all this around the world, which is the house of 45% of all the marine species or maritime species in our region. We must go speak about the efforts that we're heading with our cyber crimes. We have some new policies against cyber crimes and that are fostering cybersecurity in our country. We have launched for the first time in Latin America a ethic framework for the development of AI, artificial intelligence, and we have a mission nowadays that we are going to have with experts to have a regulatory framework for this, so we can go ahead with the science and technology with not manipulating this, and we will not fall under algorithm manipulation that in some cases are affecting the development of electoral processes as we have seen around the world. Having said all this, we are celebrating this regional strategy as a coordination paradigm and of work in team or teamwork. And we are having this UNODC office to raise itself from Colombia that validates our efforts in our country, and we can be secure that Colombia wishes to be a more active member every day, and that we're here to contribute in something that is so important with the demystification incomplete of the consumption of cocaine in the country. We know the harm that cocaine does, and we know the scourge that it has brought our country. And it is also important to show the world the affectation that cocaine also brings in their environmental matters. For every hectare of cocaine that is being planted, we're destroying 2 or 3 hectares of tropical jungle. But also precursors and chemicals are also and terminating this environment or this natural thing, the consumption of gasoline and for the production of cocaine and the mixed with cement. We must put this also on the table, that these are one of the drugs that harms most in the HGCH. And that's the reason why it's so important to add all these elements against this drug or narcotics that are pertinent to the world we are living in today.
I would like to congratulate you, Dr. Wally, and I would like to acknowledge Pierre Lapac, a hardworking man and independent. He has known how to run the office hand in hand with the government. Not being complacent, but being a true partner, true ally, truly cooperating so that the public policies against drugs and crime are successful. I celebrate your presence in Colombia. I would also like to celebrate that you, in your opening remarks, elevated the generosity of the Colombian people, protecting 1.8 million migrants that have left their country due to a dictatorship. They have been accepted in Colombia, and they have already received their status of temporary protection. It's not only a policy for humanitarian aid, but a policy of national security hand in hand. Ambassadors, I greet you once again, and I would like to reiterate that this report that is being shared today, this regional vision and the regional office based in our country will allow us to continue cooperating successfully. We already have success stories to share, like the strategy that we have announced greatly. The Orion strategy has been expanded throughout all the Caribbean, achieving record seizures in our fight against drugs. And I would also like to make a call. Today, all nations are consumers of narcotics, sadly. But some also have the status of being producers and consumers at the same time. In Colombia, we are facing this phenomenon with the strategy that we call the Future Roadmap. It's a comprehensive strategy. And I believe that today we renew it and promote it in other countries of consumption. A campaign to fight against that increased consumption in our youth. To attack this only from the point of view of supply is not enough. That could generate dangerous asymmetries. Colombia represents 48% of all narcotic seizures made in the Western Hemisphere. Colombia, with its seizures, has also been able to save many lives. But if we do not have a proportional and equivalent effort where there's great levels of consumption, these initiatives will not be far reaching. Dr. Wali, from the UNODC, let us reestablish massive campaigns to reach the citizenry and also allow us to attack consumption, the use. With this, I would like to wrap up by saying that cooperation, a multilateral cooperation in the fight against drugs and crime have been a fundamental pillar of the most important conventions and treaties. Today, we want this multilateral cooperation, and these new visions allow us to be even stronger and more efficient in our actions together. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. We have now finalized the opening ceremony of this event. We would like to thank those that are following us via streaming on the presidency's website, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the YouTube channel of the UNODC Colombia. May you all have a great afternoon. And for those that are present in the room, please remain seated while the President of the Republic leaves the room, please. Thank you.
Ahora procedemos a un breve receso para UNODC Colombia. Muchas gracias.
Bienvenidos.
Welcome back. Coming up next, we will continue the presentation of the strategic vision of the UNODC for LATAM and the Caribbean 2022-2025, given by Ms. Hani Cueva Beteta, Director of the Regional Desk for LATAM and Caribbean of the UNODC.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Could you load my presentation onto the screen, please? That's the one. Thank you very much. I wanted to thank you for this invitation to participate in this launch here in Colombia. I wanted to greet the Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Martha Lucia Ramirez, our Executive Secretary, Mrs. Wally, to all the distinguished members of the diplomatic team, and to all our participants, both here in person as well as those following us via streaming on the YouTube channel. It's a true honor for me to be here in Colombia to present this strategic vision of the UNODC for LATAM and Caribbean 2022-2025, the first of its type for the region, which presents an approach for implementing the global strategy in the region. The intent behind this strategy is to promote justice as a mechanism to achieve better equity, prosperity, and to achieve the SDGs. In that sense, a basic element over which we have developed this strategy is the understanding that there cannot be development without security, nor vice versa. They are, of course, intimately linked. As such, to attend to one, it's necessary to work on the other, promoting justice and promoting more transparent and accountable institutions. Via this strategy, we also want to continue supporting the teams that require it to reinforce their response in the fight against drugs and crime, as well as facing emerging challenges under the mandate of the UNODC. Finally, we also want to improve and reinforce the internal structure of our organization in the region to improve its operational efficacy and to maximize its impact. Next slide, please. As our Executive Secretary, Mrs. Wally, mentioned, creating this strategy was a highly consultative process based on existing publications of the UNODC. For the development and formulation of this document, we had the application of 119 consultations, in addition to the participation of 221 individuals in our surveys. These consultations and surveys were complemented by internal discussions, both at the branch and also out in the field. And after implementing this strategy, we had various feedback sessions with the CARICOM groups based in Vienna and New York. Next slide, please. In this consultative process, we prioritize the participation of government representatives, which make up, as you can see in blue, half of all consultations performed and almost 2/3 of the volunteer participants in the survey. Both instruments also had participation of other stakeholders, including members of multilateral and regional organizations, including the system of the United Nations, civil society organizations, as well as the private and academic sectors, amongst others. Next slide, please. The consultations confirmed the relevance and importance of the UNODC's works in the region. As mentioned by many participants in the surveys, the expertise of its personnel, and a solid network of field branches. Additionally, the consultations also shared consistent messages to highlight the need to continue working on evidence-based initiatives with a flexible regional approach, including multi-country participation with reinforced partnerships placing key attention to the links between security and development. 4 areas of investment were consistently identified in the process as priorities for the region, including the fight against corruption, economic crimes, fight against organized crime, to reinforce crime prevention, criminal justice, and the global problem of drugs. To wrap up, the proposal of this strategic vision for LATAM and the Caribbean presents 3 components, which you can see on the slide. The first of which is prioritizing or optimizing these 4 areas of investment I mentioned, identified via the consultations, each with a maximum of 4 lines of action. Second, in gray, is related to how we implement our mandate, identifying 6 catalysts of change which will be included in a cross-cutting fashion in each line of work for implementation. And finally, the third is related to the implementation of 3 internal organization improvements to maximize the impact of our initiatives. Now, before going into greater detail with this proposal, it's important to mention that its formulation and its framework is based on the regional context. We know that the region has many strengths and opportunities related to UNODC's work. The countries in the region have played a key role as a laboratory for best practices and have provided a broad range of tools that have the potential of being replicated globally. For example, in the areas of sustainable alternative development, in collaboration for creating statistics, and in work together with civil society to produce and create anti-corruption policies. The region has also been a pioneer in South-to-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. However, these opportunities coexist with a series of challenges with which the region has fought against. For example, a high level of inequality in access to services and income, with IDB indicating that the wealthiest 10% earns 22% more than the poorest. The region also has the highest levels of lethal and non-lethal violence, with almost 2 out of every 5 intentional homicides. In this region, although having a low percentage of the global population, these structural challenges are accompanied by prevalent perceptions of corruption and impunity, gender inequality, lack of opportunities for our youth, and a growing vulnerability to environmental threats. And to all this, we add the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic, COVID-19, which has showcased these challenges that we have going forward. Next slide, please. In this context, we have to prioritize the actions in 4 priority areas, as I mentioned earlier. And it's important to say, as has also been mentioned in previous speeches, that these areas are interrelated. They are related. We cannot cover them without understanding the others. But now I will briefly explain each one and the priority lines of action, understanding that there will, of course, always be a connection between them. The first one I will cover is the fight against corruption and economic crimes, in which we will continue working on by focusing on 4 aspects. First, to continue supporting the implementation of national strategies, which has been occurring here in Colombia and in 9 additional countries in the region. Additionally, we will continue expanding the reinforcement of strategies against corruption, or strategies in the fight against corruption. Looking at sectoral initiatives on a need-case basis, we also promote international cooperation in this area and improvement overall on prevention. And when possible, we will have initiatives when necessary, like in sports or related to sports. And finally, we would like to promote a regional initiative that is specifically adapted to the needs and opportunities that LATAM and Caribbean present, with reinforced expertise in the region and for the region to respond to emerging priorities. Next slide, please. The next topic is to confront the global problem on drugs. We will continue supporting countries with this multidisciplinary approach, combining prevention and interdiction, looking for a balance on strategies to reduce both supply and demand. Here we have 4 lines of action. The first, to continue with our investigation, monitoring, and analysis, analyzing trends of new and growing trends like new psychoactive substances. Second, to continue reinforcing the capabilities of our law enforcement agents, both in cross border work as well as national work in their fight against drugs seized. Third, to continue expanding our work on alternative sustainable development as a prevention strategy and volunteer eradication of illegal crops with a demonstrated high level of impact with 94% eradication and with a reincidence level below 20%. We will continue working on prevention of drug use, drug consumption, working on treatment and rehabilitation of individuals with disorders due to drug consumption. Next slide, please.
The third area is the strengthening of the UNODC work for the prevention against crime and criminal justice. And we'll be looking at three main areas. The first one is to see the need of the penitentiary that it can reinforce this imprisonment to prevent and to that helps with the reinsertion social reinsertion of the people who are in prison. The second one is to prevent and to fight against gender violence against women as a recurrent threat that requires to be addressed together in with different approaches with socio-economical things also from the United Nations to support member states. And third one in this area is to expand the work in the prevention of crime with special emphasis in youth, education, and sport as the prevention of violence with gangs. The second one, please. The following one, please. Finally, the fourth area that work would be to fight against organized crime and to prioritize four aspects as well. The first one, to continue with the support for the development and execution of national strategies for the implementation of the Convention of Transnational Organized Crime and the three protocols with human trafficking, illicit trafficking of immigrants, and weapons. Second one, to continue the support of the countries in the region with the implementation of trans-border with the strategies that have shown positive outcomes in the relationships for the fight against human trafficking and armed trafficking. The second one is to affect the crimes that affect our environment in a consistent way, and special attention in this region with the illegal wildlife animals with residues like garbage, illicit mining. In the fourth one and last place, we will seek to have the exchange of information and good regional practices as to improve the coordination and collaboration in our country, with special attention with the addressing of cybercrime and the development of platforms that can facilitate the joint work and the joint assessment of these emerging threats in the pandemic context. The following, please. As we had mentioned priorly, the implementation of this UNODC mandates have 6 catalysts of change as transversal strategies that are going to be implementing all our areas. And we are here to improve the response for work in the region and also to contribute to the advance of the 2030 agenda. These 6 elements include the first one, the transfusional flexible collaboration that includes through the common borderlines. The second one, to make the best use of the available information like data, good practices to use the technical efforts that have been offered. And the third one, to create an effort and multidisciplinary one that can fight the violence and assure security. As a multinational for the development with the solution requires investment in different additional fields, including the prevention of violence and the penitentiary reforms. The fourth one, to have a rights approach based on people, having the human rights approach in mind, and the strengthening of this youth emphasis on these exclusive approaches. The fifth one, the strengthening and the expansion of this in line with the UNODC strategies, and this will also seek to have a better link with the regional overseers in the region. And we will carry out efforts to have a better collaboration with the private sector and the civil society. The final one, the sixth one, is the use, to increase the use and the technology and communication, especially recognizing that one of the things that have happened after the pandemic is the increase of these digital apps as positive ones and negative ones. We will have to, the following one, please. Line with these global strategies, we're going to have three operational changes to have the reform where we can execute this mandate and to, with the view to minimize its impact. The first one, the regional fostering in a more coordinated and consistent way to satisfy the demand and collaboration among countries in the exchange of country in this topic. And the second one is the thematical address focus points in the global line. And for this, we will strengthen the existing capabilities, and we will hire, or we will have people for specialized people for the region and the multi and for the country. And the third one, the strengthening and mobilization of the resources and the communications, working in a better diversity for funding, and also seeking to strengthen the strategic communications of these outcomes that we have received and the impact that's being carried out by UNODC. Follow one, please. And with this one, I'm going to wrap up. We were speaking about the action plan in the morning, and we would also like to present some of these. In the following months, we will be working in three different aspects for the implementation of this strategy. First one, the consolidation in the continuous work areas. We will continue to do this. As I mentioned before, this will include the alternative development, the monitoring of analysis, and the prevention against and fight against the violence against genders, and for the conventions that we are overseers, and also prevention of those people who have disorders because of the use of drugs. The second one, the development of regional strategies in growth that will also include a more harmonized initiative across borders against these crimes that affect the environment, and the regional focus to fight crime, and the penitentiary one initiatives that we have to fight against crime that are centered around the youth. And the third one, the enhancement of this coordination, including, as we had mentioned before, the aligning of our work plans in a country level with the strategy, and also the strengthening of our thematical capabilities. And finally, as we said before, the strategical coordination includes, as we mentioned this morning, the creation here in Colombia of our regional office for the Andean and South Cone, which our executive director and our president will be speaking about in a bit. There's no microphone, we cannot.
A continuación,
We're going to proceed with the comments and the presentation in behalf of Robert Valente, the Regional Director of the United Nations Office for the Latin America and the Caribbean, that is accompanying us in a virtual way.
okay.
Thank you very much. Before anything, please allow me to tell you that it's been a pleasure to have listened to these interventions of the President of the Republic of Colombia, the Vice President and Foreign Affairs Minister, and also the Executive Director of UNODC, Ms. Gara Wali, and of course our sessional head for Latin America and the Caribbean of UNODC. I would also like to make use of this time to say hello to all the reps and all the international organizations in cooperation, the resident coordinator of the United Nations system in the Republic of Colombia, my dear colleague Mireya Lilian Fornel, the rep of UNODC in Colombia, Dr. Pierre Lapac, and the resident coordinators in the Latin American regions and Caribbean who are present, and also the reps of those global and program agencies of the United Nations, of those country teams in the region as UNDRL and regional ones and global ones, and all those reps from the civil society in the broad or ample sense of our word, all those participants that before anything, I would also like to thank the Colombian government, the host and organizer of this important meeting with UNODC for their invitation and also to represent this audience. And I'm also pleased to be able to show the efforts of UNODC to develop this strategical vision for Latin America and the Caribbean, and to also highlight the importance of this precise event for the whole region to have progress in the 2030 agenda, and especially to be able to work together to be able to foster our goal of the strategical vision. It is important to mention this, the narrow collaboration when the development with the United Nations and UNODC and the United Nations in the regional level in Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the national tiers and global ones. I'm also pleased to highlight that the Coordination System Office for the development in the United Nations are the ones who are responsible for these systems, and the resident coordinators. We consider this commitment essential, and also these programs are essential for the reform of the development program in the UNODC and these clear comments. And we have also prepared to fulfill all their goals in these countries, how to seek their synergies and to be able to complement all these collective efforts in the United Nations systems together with the government and the cooperation frameworks. Please allow me to also highlight on this leadership context in the regional office for UNODC for Central America and the Caribbean, Panama, and the Thematical Commission for Violence and Crime together with UNODC and UNCEF, and this regional thematic of the governments together with the PEC and UNDOS to answer together for this agenda, supporting ourselves on these key challenges that are transcending our borderlines in the Latin American and Caribbean countries, together with our region, with the development system of the United Nations. Our strategic vision that has been presented by Ms. Tuteca comes in a very important moment when the region is facing great challenges. In the last 2 decades, the organized crime and corruption has been one of the main challenges that we face in the Latin American countries, because there's one of the main factors that contribute to the highest levels of violence. President Duque also spoke about poverty, made reference about this poverty that is also the outcome of the impact of this social inequality of organized crime, transnational organized crime, and corruption. In this context, the current pandemic of COVID-19 has strengthened all these problems and has affected the society and economies in the region in a very strong way. The report of one of our heads in the Latin America and the Caribbean since in 2020 highlights that the devastating effects of the pandemic will demand a strong commitment with the fight against violence, corruption, and crime, and the effective presence of the state in all the territory. The strategical vision presented is not only seeking to address all the world problems with drugs and organized crime, transnational organized crime, and to counterattack the production and the economical level to prevent all these crimes in the criminal justice, strengthen the criminal justice, but also some more precise involvement with all these entities in the United Nations systems and other key actors in the region. The integrated responses, the innovative ones, and the coordination of development within the systems and with other sub-regional agents and regional ones that are more important than ever in view of this current pandemic of COVID and the repercussion for crimes and corruption for the whole Latin American and Caribbean region. It can be felt in a strong way. This is essential to create strategical partnerships to be able to reconstruct and to increase the support to the member states with a view so we can achieve all this. It is very important to highlight that President Duque did some emphasis on the need to strengthen this fight against drugs and all type of crimes, including those cyber crimes and environmental crimes, to foster the coordination and the international collaboration against corruption, also to secure the peace and legislation in this framework.
The United Nations plays a key role and has a key role to play in supporting member states of the region in their fight against crime, drugs, corruption, and in preventing crimes, and to reinforce the justice sector. International and interinstitutional cooperation will be key for having solid evidence-based interventions for all society, assuring that the member states of the region are well equipped to address these issues and to have long-term sustainable development. I would once again like to thank UNODC and the government of Colombia for this invitation of the launch for the strategic vision, and also for this excellent event that is very well or very relevant with its development strategies. Thanks to all of you. And thank you, Mr. Valent. Now we will continue with the panel of priority areas, the 4 prioritized areas of the strategic vision for LATAM and the Caribbean, 2022-2025. As panelists, we have Mr. Gerardo Laviaga, of the member of the Unit of Transparency of the Secretariat of Mexico, Ms. Luz Angela Bahamon, Delegate Prosecutor of Financial Crimes from the Attorney General's Office of the Nation, Magistrate Maria Eugenia Lopez Arias, President of the Supreme Court of Justice of Panama, whom is with us virtually, and Mr. Luis Begoria, National Secretary of the Drug Policy of the Ministry of Justice and Security Policy of Brazil. Mr. Gerardo Laviaga will now mention the first pillar of the strategic vision, corruption and financial crimes. Without further ado, Mr. Laviaga, you have the floor. First of all, I would like to thank the UNODC for this invitation. UNODC, as we have started calling it in Spanish. And I would like to thank the Colombian government for the hospitality. This beautiful country, I'm very honored to be here. I would like to greet my Colombian colleagues, and I would like to highlight the presence of Alejandro Garcia Moreno, ambassador from my country, Mexico, in Colombia. I'll start on a basic premise. There can't be a strategy, there can't be an efficient fight against corruption in the region if we do not start attacking inequality. Inequality is the huge enemy that needs to be vanquished. Crime, drug consumption, corruption, all of that starts there. If I make 1,000 and you make 1, it's easy for me to corrupt you. By giving you 2, I'm already doubling your salary. It doesn't affect me. I make 1,000. Corruption. has perpetuated based on this inequality. It's convenient for many people. I have control. I earn 1,000, you earn $1. You have to do what I say. We cannot understand the fight if we do not first understand inequality. Having said that, in the 12 minutes I have been granted, I will speak of the assessment, secondly, what is being done, and third, what needs to still be done in my country. According to the 2021 edition, the perception of Mexicans of the corruption increase was reduced to 49% in 2021. They also perceive an increase in democracy from 38 to 43% in the same year. But this optimism goes against the data from the last assessment of international transparency. Of the 180 countries evaluated in the same year, 2021, 131 were in the same position. From the previous year, while 23 fell in the ranking, only 25 countries improved their position. You all know these numbers, these statistics. The perception of international transparency. The three least corrupt countries according to this ranking are Denmark, Finland, and New Zealand. The three most corrupt countries according to this ranking are Somalia, Syria, and Southern Sudan. Colombia is at 39. Mexico is at 31. What are the reasons for which Mexico did not progress according to Transparency International? And this is the diagnostic or assessment. Immense corruption has to go from investigations to effective fines. Investigation is not enough. We need to fine. And this needs the participation of two key players. First, the Attorney General's office, and second, judicial police. They have the heaviest burden according to international organizations. Second point of the assessment or the diagnostic, the national anti-corruption system is not articulated. The divisions and the units are not articulated or coordinated according to Transparency International. Third, one of the weakest links of the anti-corruption policy in Mexico is the recovery of assets. Once again, the Attorney General's office and the judges have the most important role in this regard. Fourth, the Mexican government has to take advantage of broad social support to fight against the networks of corruption that are still alive. According to this assessment, this diagnostic, I will now go to what we are doing, the second point of my presentation. What are we doing to fight against corruption? One of the achievements, and as surprising as it might seem, is a permanent discourse of President Lopez Obrador every day against corruption. He has achieved something that no other president has achieved. To place corruption on the national agenda. We have to wake up thinking about corruption and go to sleep thinking about corruption. And this is a warning for the entire government, for all companies, and for all potential corrupt individuals. Technical instruments are not enough if there's no guiding light, and I believe President Lopez Obrador has understood that. Well, we cannot fight against corruption without that. This discourse of the president has an impact every day. Secondly, the use of information technologies. In Mexico, we have the comprehensive public reporting system, so citizens can file a report anonymously. Additionally, Roberto Salcedo has promoted two logs to register everything related to contractual practices and everything related to civil works. The most important aspect of corruption is that no footprint left. The idea with Secretary Salcedo is that a footprint is left with everything. Third, transparency and open government. The government openness in favor of accountability has been a commitment of the Mexican state, assumed as part of the fourth action plan, made in a partnership with NGOs 2019-2021. Fourth point, the budget allotted to fighting corruption in 2022, the government will increase by 6.3% funds assigned to fighting against corruption, which commits us to double our efforts. Fifth point of what we're doing, prioritizing international issues. According to international anti-corruption conventions, it's a priority for us. And also, in compliance with UNODC'S 2021, we continue working with the mechanism of monitoring and implementing the international treaty against corruption. In this, I would like to highlight the key role that the UNODC has played, not only by promoting the Meridian Treaty, but the permanent consultation and permanent support we have received from them. Mrs. Wally, be very proud by the work that your representative has had in Mexico. I will continue with the third point. What is pending? What is coming next? And with this, I'll wrap up. We still have 3 aspects pending. I already mentioned what we have done. And now to wrap up, I will mention what we need to do, what we have to do. First, we need to review the legal provisions. In Mexico, we have a horrible figure. Mr. Ambassador, if I'm mistaken by anything, you can scream at me later, you can scold me later, but I have to say, we have a figure called amparo, which protects whoever requests it. But while in other countries the law covers everyone, in Mexico, the amparo only covers those that need it. If a law comes up that is unconstitutional and I recur to this amparo, the law no longer applies to me. That law doesn't apply to me. And for using this legal instrument, the amparo, you need a very costly, a very expensive lawyer. But who cannot pay for an expensive law firm needs to comply with the law. We have a new tax. All diplomatic members have to pay an additional 30%. And whoever uses the amparo legal figure will no longer be subject to that figure. This is horrible. From the Constitution itself, we are promoting inequality, which is a protective legal measure, this amparo. Now, democracy. We have to review the electoral process. For example, for a political campaign, the limit of resources is $80,000. If any of us want to be a federal deputy in Mexico, we cannot receive 1 cent over that. But if we all receive the same quantity, we'll all have the same number of votes. And I want to obtain more votes than you do. So I need to look for additional financing. And if the opposing party discovers that I received additional money, I need to ensure that nobody finds out. So with the law, once again, we are promoting corruption. Third point, and Roberto Salcel, the Secretariat, has mentioned this a lot. Training. If we have a team of trainers and a highly specialized team to fight against corruption, we will obtain better results. With these ideas, we are perfectly aligned with the priority areas of the UNODC. And in that sense, we will continue working with you, and we will continue working together and counting on the support and advising of the UNODC. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Verda. We'll continue with the presentation of Luz Angela Bahamon, Delegate Prosecutor of Financial Crimes of the Attorney General's Office of Colombia. Mrs. Bahamon will speak about the fight against transnational organized crime. You have the floor, Dr. Bahamon.
Buenos días.
Good morning, everyone. A warm and respectful greeting to Madam Vice President Dr. Marta Lucia Ramirez, to Dr. Galawali, Executive Secretary of the UNODC, to Pierre Lapac, representative of UNODC in Colombia, ambassadors, chiefs of diplomatic missions here in Colombia, representatives of international accredited organizations in Colombia, members of the national government, fellow panel members, and to all the participants. The Attorney General's Office of the nation, led by Dr. Francisco Barbosa Delgado, acknowledges the importance of consolidating and having events like this one. First, to thank you for the continuous and permanent support that we have received from UNODC in our permanent fight against organized crime and also transnational organized crime. Secondly, to reiterate the spirit of cooperation in the sustained fight against illegal economies as the financial muscle of the transnational organized crime, which have repercussions in the entire region. I need to speak of transnational organized crime, and I want to focus on because in Colombia, with our public policies and with the organizations we work with and with our investigations, we have understood that we need to attack the financial arm of these structures, of these criminal organizations. Without them, our efforts would be futile. We need to be focused on attacking those illegal flows, identifying those illegal flows, and of course, developing a robust strategy that would allow us to act nationally, but also internationally with our counterparts, our peers, so that we can disassemble this transnational.
In these measures, the good practices that we have implemented from a prosecutor office, in first place, is the adoption of the strategical direction of 2020-2024, led by our general prosecutor in the streets and in the territories, which is seen as one of those practices that strengthen the detection of those illicit capitals of these criminal structures through the focalizing of this structural fundamental groups in each region. Now, these characterizations at a national level and in transnational level, and of course, this together with the sustainable development of some actions. The presentation, please. Now, these actions are for a prioritization of a lot of these main impact actions and to study their topologies, and now we see how the crypto actives and crypto money is beginning to take a boom and becoming a mechanism used by these structures against the law in a transnational characterization. That's why we have done an effort to identify the consolidation of these financial structures, the seizure of these crypto assets that are being materialized through the capital blankings that we can put these guys in our justice system and international systems. And this also determines the focalization of these resources in high value assets. And we have the prioritization of these phenomenons and diversification and coexistence of these criminal economies. And this is the reason why we must focalize our efforts in the strategical markets as drug trafficking, those environmental crimes, smuggling, and some catalysts that are chained with like corruption, like illicit trafficking of humans and migrants. And these are the mechanisms that generate without discussion these challenges, and we have all this laundry, and that's what we have to do, the recycling of legitimization of these funds. Now, the persecution of these assets that we are after in the transnational crimes, we see it from the disarticulation and the operation of this capital blanking of these people who are making themselves accountable to legitimize these funds and within the criminal justice or transmit that are on the we can fight the richness of these people and all the things that they produce given to these crimes with a clear identification of their people who do the money laundering, the economical sectors that are permeating, and all the structures that are there to legitimize their resources. And of course, this together with the consolidation of the simultaneous operations where I would say that we do not only have to punish those who do the laundry, but we must do in a simultaneous way all these measures under these resources under three fundamental pillars: articulation among institutions, amongst agencies, and among countries. The coordination or concentration of these investigation actions that in some way we can center our actions not on those technical, classical specializations of investigations that we have that are not working to clarify this, but also looking at the analysis of these economical structures that we can have the traceability or flow of these illicit crimes and money, and of course, they will allow our prosecutors and our justice officials the displacement of this place to go to these places where these crimes are happening, to have all this evidence material and all this physical evidence that allow us to have all these measures in a reduced time. Now, together with this direct strategical direction, we have created a strategy that we have called Argenta, which is a strategy that is solid, sustainable of persecution on these illicit finances and the identification of those economical financial flows, because we have realized that this crime is dispersed and decentralized because we have difficulties in the identification of these illicit flows in international levels, because we had a low component of articulation, coordination among and these forces that fight this organized crime and their financing in international tiers and transnational ones. So we designed the strategy that looks or seeks to create strategies in an investigative order, strategical order, and justice order, to have a view, to be more effective in this knowledge, and to be able to identify these criminal flows where we can begin to work in a harmonized way with these different countries and different agencies, and of course, to be able to have some outcomes in a short and medium term, which are the main axes to we must develop and attack to the finances to these criminal organizations in an integral or comprehensive way in an transnational national level. And of course, the available information, sometimes we have a lot of this, of the way these finances are moving around in different countries, friends of us from the regions. We have investigative tasks and the way, and they know how we're moving this money in Colombia from our own prosecutors who carry out investigation against drug trafficking, against organized crime. They have the knowledge and information in a way that these assets are mobilizing themselves, and they have a bubble where we can have all this available information in the least time as possible, because we have realized when we hit or strike their financial assets, we can begin to weaken their actions, and this way also to strengthen the articulation cooperation, not only through formal channels but also informal channels of these work tables, of these phone calls, where we can also share information in real time, and that will allow us to have these positive outcomes and expected outcomes to interrupt the growth and the dynamics of these finances, and of course to develop tools for the investigation and the management of this human resources, so we can strengthen this resource for those things that really have relevance for us in investigations. In this framework, we are working with some strategies like planning, yearly planning. We have studied our criminal organizations. We have studied their relationship with these transnational organizations, and we have identified these criminal phenomenons that we have to prioritize as drug trafficking, environment, smuggling. Additional to this, we must focalize ourselves on what's higher impact structures like Clan del Golfo for us, the Pelusos, ELN, that have this service outsources portfolio that we have identified externally, how they dynamize all these earnings. And for this reason, we must have access to a second investigation line as the integrity. In this moment, we're focalizing our efforts in Dakar in the operational and military force of these structures, but we're also focalizing our efforts in looking at the way they're legitimizing their resources, in part by taking all these measures on the richness that have been obtained by these criminal actions, and of course the communication, coordination, and the exchange of information, consolidating these institutional channels and reliable channels with our strategical alliances or partners to fight these transnational criminal structures, to have the blockers, to see how they're transferring their assets or goods, and what are the conversational channels, what facade companies they're having access to, and what economical havens they are working with, so we can have this articulation in real time and least time as possible that would allow us to develop specific technique techniques of investigation like undercover ones where we can have these material evidence elements and physical evidence that will allow us to see this in a clear way. In the cooperation, international cooperation framework, we're developing several tools. We're developing, well, our Colombian prosecutor office is the leader of the design of this cooperation, every cooperation of and the extent of these assets. We're also creating a protocol of this to share all this information with the United States. In this framework, we have also designed a national strategy against the fight for the trafficking of migrants, and we are looking at these transferring programs of knowledge within our peers, viewing new typologies, new ways of circulation of movements of this money, but together with this to create work tables that will allow us to construct or build these joint operations and simultaneous one where we can weaken this phenomenon not only on a local level but also international level. The following one, please. All right, just like in Colombia, it's been important to create a strategy with those people who are being extradited, who are being requested by other countries, especially by the United States, to analyze, identify, and to follow all those assets and goods that are under their money laundering people or their families, together with the articulation that I have mentioned so much with all these countries, all these illicit flows that will allow us to have progress as we are doing with the United States together. With the exchange of information of these assets, once we have identified them, and another good practice is the constant follow-up of these investigations to optimize all these available resources and to view all these technical executions of these investigations and all the tasks that will allow us in least time as possible to generate the outcomes that have been expected with this fight against the organized crimes. Now, the challenges are a lot and quite large. The following slide, please.
Buscamos
Okay, we're permanently seeking to strengthen these communication channels and cooperation channels that are agile, quick with these international agencies, our peers, and non-governmental and governmental agencies to be able to have this articulation of this criminal organization to foster these operational strategies that are simultaneous, that I has mentioned before, so we can have these outcomes that are quick and important for the fight against transnational crime, to create mechanisms that would allow us to have or offer our partner countries all this evidence, physical evidence, and that has been legally received that would allow us to carry out these investigations within these cases in a timely manner so we can go to these information channels that sometimes are slow and would take us a long time, would not allow us to carry our actions before these structures, that criminal structures that we're investigating. And together we believe that there's some companionship and permanent support of these transnational networks for the training of all these new ways to be able to view how these criminals are moving, how these transnational networks are moving around, and what under what portfolios and services they're having access to, so we will not stay behind, and to be able to break this up and seize all these assets in the least time as possible to establish these new mechanisms that would allow us to see all these financial structures, to be able to facilitate all the exchange of information and the measures that we must take on all these financial products that will allow us to freeze all these earnings and to avoid these finances to be robust in the financial apparatus, and that would allow us to see this in the military way, and also to make this all these techniques robust so we can have in the new technologies and the new ways of these methods to blank or clear their money. The outcomes that we have had in Colombia with development of these good practices that have been translated, as I would say, the adoption of these serious public policies that have come from our government, the adoption of laws that allow us to be more efficient in the fight against organized crime, and of course, in the juris- that allow us to date from 2020 to 22 to have these measures for more than 595 billion. Continue, please.
And captures for more than 400 captures related to these types of crimes of a transnational nature. I would like to wrap up just by highlighting, like Madam Vice President said this morning, we are leaders in the region in the fight against transnational organized crime because we have changed the basic concept that for many years we were using to focus on the operational arm by capturing members of these organizations without taking into account that daily there's a transfer of the chain of power for which it was necessary to solidify a serious, clear, and decisive policy to focus on the financial arm of these organizations. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Prosecutor. Coming up next, we will receive the presentation from Magistrate Maria Eugenia Arias, President of the Supreme Court of Justice of Panama, whom will speak about reinforcing crime prevention and criminal justice. Good morning. Excellent President of Republic, Dr. Ivan Duque Marquez, Madam Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Marta Lucia Ramirez of Colombia, the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of Latin America and the Caribbean, Excellency Ana Luisa Castro, Vice President in charge of Multilateral Affairs and Cooperation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Panama, the chiefs of the diplomatic missions in Colombia, distinguished keynote speakers, Honorable Gerardo Laviaga, member of the Unit of Transparency of the Secretary of Public Affairs Mexico, Honorable Madam Luz Angela Bahamon, Delegate Prosecutor of Financial Crimes, Colombia, Honorable Mr. Luis de Goria, National Secretary of Drug Policies of the Ministry of Justice and Public Safety, Brazil, Honorable Madam Galawali, Executive Secretary of the UNODC in Vienna, Honorable Madam Hane Cueva, Director of the Regional Desk for Latin America and the Caribbean, Office of the United Nations, Office Against Drugs and Crimes, UNODC, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the UNODC, the Regional Office for Central America and the Caribbean in Panama, for the honor that they have given me by granting me this opportunity to participate as a keynote speaker in the launch of the strategic vision of UNODC for Latin America and the Caribbean 2022-2025. And to speak about the area of investment titled Reinforcement, Crime Prevention, and Criminal Justice. Now, for more than half a century, after celebrating the 4th Congress of the United Nations on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, which occurred in Kyoto in 1970, the global community assumed the responsibility to increase, standardize, and double their efforts to prevent crimes with special emphasis on the social and economic evolution. Without a doubt, crime prevention has enormous an extraordinary impact on the social and economic development of societies in our region. This repeats itself with very little variation from country to country in Latin America. The efforts to reduce inequality from the social and economic point of view are shared and are closely linked to the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, inspired by the words of Agenda 2030, in the sense of not leaving anyone behind. The aforementioned, taking into account that every person, from the poorest to the wealthiest, truly have the opportunity to access justice and receive access to basic rights with effective reparations in case their rights are violated, and overall to live in a society that is peaceful, fair, just, and inclusive at all levels, without violence, without unequal or discriminatory treatment, to have a professional interactions geared towards resolving the most urgent needs of the society, and also to be held accountable, all in favor of sustainable development to benefit the present and future generations. By default, every member state of the United Nations that has assumed this commitment must take into account the Sustainable Development Goals as a point of reference to stipulate their own goals to ensure peaceful coexistence in which respect of human dignity and as such of human rights be the main objective as well as main result. It's imperative to privilege the construction of a justice system that is functional, efficient, professional, but overall humane, sensitive to the needs of its users and beneficiaries. We also have to worry about having a real criminal policy at the state level, that its effectivity not be subject to the comings and goings of government administrations. To summarize, it's about favoring the materialization of a sustainable evolution of our resources in order to foster a state based on rule of law that is solid, to be guardian of the most vulnerable citizens and human rights. In this scenario, they play an important role in designing and implementing policies, prevention policies and programs with a holistic outlook, the collection and assessment of official statistics that are relevant, and exhaustive, detailed technical scientific analysis of the criminal phenomena, both national as well as cross-border or transnational. That collection, assessment, analysis imply a challenge overall for countries with a reduced or low income. Under this landscape, the support that the UNODC provides to Latin America and the Caribbean is critical. The political constitution of the Republic of Panama from October 1972, which has had reforms in 1978, 1983, and 2004, establish the foundation and alignments of our state based on rule of law, determining the consolidation of the state, safeguarding freedom, democracy, and institutional stability, prioritizing human dignity, promotion of social justice, the general well-being, and regional integration. These goals, which at the same time are principles, create the foundation of a long-term vision, I am sure, that not only for Panama, but also for the rest of the region. They represent a window of opportunity, an ideal window of opportunity as a state policy to coordinate our efforts characterized by a criminal policy based on human rights, taking into account all the following aspects: prevention, control, investigation, fines, enforcement of the fines or punishments, and social reinsertion of the perpetrator. The Panamanian state has put forth efforts to improve security in the country by training and equipping all the relevant authorities, reinforcing our border control, promoting the exchange of pertinent information, and taking advantage of technological advancements available. We have implemented not only legal reforms but also institutional reforms to protect ourselves against corruption and organized crime in all its representations. For example, we have a national citizen security system designed to reduce the levels of insecurity and to guarantee a harmonious coexistence in peace. We also have a national strategic plan, Panama 2030. Amongst its 5 strategic pillars, we can find one dedicated to democracy, institutionality, and governance, in which they address justice, eradication of corruption, and citizens' safety, violence, and crime. And another one focused on strategic partnerships for development. Of course, we have a long way to go. It's an incessant journey that we have going forward. But with the SDGs in mind, in order to promote peaceful, inclusive societies, solid and robust and transparent institutions, which is related to SDG 16, hand in hand with partnerships to achieve these goals, we need to work consistently, faith, and unbreakable faith, as a matter of fact, to protect our common interests, reinforce crime prevention and criminal justice, as has already been said. It needs to be based on respect for human rights, but also with a complete understanding of the criminal phenomenon, which is based on economic misery, economic poverty, social conflicts, personal conflicts, the absence of education, and the lack of values. And hand-in-hand work or hand-in-hand efforts between the different organizations will be needed, which work separately but need to work together to structure pertinent public policies on the different programs geared to reducing the risk of criminal acts and violence at all levels, and to reduce their harmful effects on our citizens and our societies, without setting aside the new types of crime and violence that appear on a daily fashion, more and more professionalized. On this task of preventing violence in all areas and to fight against crime, cooperation, international cooperation will have a key role, and the existence of alignments over criminal policies. We understand well that we need to double our efforts and establish more rigorous fines. The success of criminal justice as an instrument for social control and its procedures depend on the presence of an effective state criminal policy, which has influence and guides every step taken in crime prevention.
In Panama, currently, we are advancing in this direction a concrete way, even though we have this general alignment for criminological policies from the Panama state created in 2006. We are foreseeing a new law that is going to have is going to be created perfectly for this direction. In other hands, it's undeniable that the society and our people depend a lot on acquisible justice and effective one as well. In Panama, there are have been 10 years that have passed since the put in march of the new justice system in the second judicial system. Then 5 years after this, September 2nd of 2011, we were able to achieve the goals that we had given ourselves under this regimen with the procedure that was in vigor throughout the territory of our republic. With this, we give compliance to the word given by the judicial body to the people in the sense of fostering the user with a new criminal justice model that is quicker, more reliable, and quick, carried out in a reasonable time and in a timely manner without any multiple and with transparency, especially very well created under its guarantees with principles and those rules that are being applied in the equality, and Panama continues to progress in a very active way, aligning all these purposes and objectives to be able to continue with the role of our criminal justice system at a national level. From the beginning of my management as the president of the second justice room and the creator of this system for the first and third justice system, and now from the presidency of the Justice Supreme Court, it has always been in our interest to carry out actions with the state agencies, with the private sector, civil society, and all those international cooperation bodies as UNODC to be able to to minimize and to strengthen our criminal justice in our nation. Those work tours have been a very important work tool for the effects to be able to know the field and which are the needs that were being claimed for and to give interest to, highlighting those spaces that are not only reduced in dimensions but also those that are scarce for the courtrooms and the ecological one and the insufficiency of the human resources, everything that is nature summed up with all the presence of the pandemic that we're going through had a direct impact in the effectiveness of the system. Together with all these, and even though we had limitation and difficulties, we are having a good progress and with firm steps, having a presence that is very effective to have all these causes. The new infrastructure has been acquired and equipped, and now we are going ahead with the necessary management to have the implementation of this justice career implemented so our justice servers can occupy their jobs with merits and proven competencies. This accompanied with the promotion of the application of good practices good justice practices manual. It's very interesting to see that even though the pandemic effects reduced the issuance of this temporarily, it was also inspiring for us to carry out all and to receive all these meaningful outcomes in the justice response. The articulation of the institutional efforts, creativity, innovation in all the processes and the resources that were required, that were received for our magisters and judges were positive for the management that were effective to the access of justice, its due process, and the application of the rectoral main processes of our criminal justice system. And within the view of this, we have an essential outcome for the criminal justice to be at the same level of the circumstances with all the demands of a real justice, a fast, a quick one, and one of quality. This is our main drive, and this is the reason why we're working for. The great part of this criminal accusational system is part of the favorable part of the main role key players with a certain planning, execution, and follow up of all the processes of implementation. Our main commitment is to continue to be perseverance and to strengthen our criminal justice system in benefits of all the people that are expecting a timely, just, equal, and transparent and accessible justice for all, and for it to have accountability to all the attendees. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Ms. Magister and President of the Supreme Court of Panama. I will give the word to, or the floor to Luis Villota, the policy, drug policy, the Justice Ministry of Brazil, who is going to make his presentation in regards to the addressing of the world problems we have with drugs. Just with this one?
Inicialmente, eu gostaria de cumprimentar
I would like to greet the Ms. Vice President Marta Lucia Ramirez and also Foreign Affairs Minister of the Republic of Colombia, to also greet the executive, chief executive of UNODC, Ms. Garawali, and also Mr. Pierre Lapang, the rep of UNODC Colombia. We would also like to thank, in behalf of Brazil, for the invitation to make part of this launching of the strategical vision of the UNODC for Latin America and the Caribbean 2022-2025. I would also like to greet Annie Cueva, Director of the Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean, together with Jose Roberto Valente, who made the presentation of the strategical vision. I would also like to greet our representatives in this panel from Mexico, Colombia, and Panama, already mentioned here by the protocols. I would also like to regard and highlight the presence of our ambassador of Brazil here in Colombia, Antonio Birkamian, a person who I also would also like to greet, and other diplomatic authorities who are here before us. I would also like to greet Elena Back, Chief of the UNODC office in Brazil, and and also all the people who are accompanying us here via YouTube. I would like to show you my presentation. The following slide, please. All right, so the region of the Latin America and Caribbean continue to be the most affected by the production and trafficking and consumption of cocaine. Countries that have been characterized with world prevalence of this cocaine production, like Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia, and others with meaningful transit drugs, like including Brazil, Mexico, Central American and Caribbean countries that are our pathway to go to the United States.
Já hoje ressaltado,
As it was just mentioned by the President of the Republic of Colombia, those numbers that were shared with you, part of the cocaine that has been seized in the Americas and in the world comes from the Americas. And almost 83% of the global quantity that has been seized in 2019, great part of this was in South America. The total quantity that was seized in Latin America increased 5% within 2018 and 2019 until we were able to achieve a record number of 755 tons. The majority of the countries and subregions, including Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, and all these reports of the cocaine that has been seized in the Latin American increase have increased, and these are traditional routes for drug trafficking towards North America. These have increased in more than 40% during 2015 to 2019. We also registered an increase of 7% of those seizures and arrests in 2018 and in 2019. For Central America, marijuana continues to be one of those most consumed substances. Their use and traffic affects the whole region in the world. And the drugs are stimulants and that have been seized from 2015 to 2019. The ecstasies was the most predominant ones in the Caribbean and South America. The following one, in terms of Brazil, the captures and the seizures were more than 544 tons of marijuana, 510 tons of cocaine. We also captured 91.2 tons in 2021. 93.4 tons, excuse me, were seized. The eradication of illegal crops like marijuana in Brazil were 615.4 tons, and the eradication of marijuana fields in Paraguay. This is an operation called Nueva Alianza, New Alliance in Brazil, or New Partnership together with Paraguay that we have been working on for a long time. In 2021, we eradicated 5,443.1 tons.
sobre apreensões de cocaína,
According to this information in the seizure of this cocaine in the Brazilian ports, the greatest seizures were in the European countries, especially Holland and Belgium. There's some African countries. The following one, please. Which are the challenges and opportunities within this landscape? The challenges that are the growing challenges given to the new psychoactive substances and other emerging drugs in Latin America. Another challenge is the production of the traffic and of cocaine in the region and some resilience in this organized crime associated in the networks, generation, data systemization, and to expand the understanding of all these trends of drug trafficking and the organized transnational organized criminal organizations. We have some information here. We show the strengthening of this international cooperation and the fostering of these mechanisms that will allow the technical assistance and experiences among countries. Another opportunity of expanding the development and the use of technologies and innovative tools to foster all the public policies related to drugs. The main standards and regulations that we have from UNODC from 1961, 1971, 1988, the Convention of the United Nations for all this transnational organized crimes, the Declaration of Kyoto, the Plan of the Hemisphere, and also the declaration, Ministerial Declaration of 2019, adopted by CND and the national plans.
Next slide, please. Now I'm going to present the Brazilian experience a bit and our best practices. You have already been talked about, you already talked about managing assets, and started in 2019 up until 2021 in Brazil, there were many legal reforms, laws approved in the National Congress, decrees, which allowed us to manage assets a bit quicker and gave us more legal security in order to seize assets in Brazil. Unfortunately, this has been in transit. The process could last 5, 6, 7 years. So there's a need for an immediate sale of those goods, those assets, before they lose their economic value, which are being stored by the state. And for that, we approved a law that in 30 days after the seizure of the good, it must be expropriated. In reality, it's a short period of time, but the law talks about a preemptive sale of the good in order to sell it at a high economic value and to avoid depreciation. Here I have some numbers as a result of this new legislation. In Brazil, we also approved the extended expropriation. For example, there's a criminal that lives off of this act or activity. And in a legal proceeding, he could lose all his capital. This perpetrator needs to show evidence of proof of ownership. In case he or she cannot, they will lose all their assets. And the state, of course, also have to show that the individual obtained this asset illegally. And as I said, the perpetrator must show legal ownership and legal acquirement. And these are the numbers I was mentioning. The number of auctions we've had. 11 auctions in 2019 to 122 auctions the next year. Auctions here in Colombia, for example, in 2021 we held 322 auctions held. Next slide, please. The amount of goods or assets from 1,030 to 4,000 and change. Here you can verify that in 2021 there was an increase, a significant increase in the amount of assets. In 2021 there was a sell with the highest economic value. Once the judicial branch started authorizing the sale of these seized assets in order to attack the financial arm of organized crime, we started seizing goods of very high economic value. Can we see the value of these seizures? Can you go back a slide, please? 43 million was the average in the last 8 years until 2018. After 2019, we were able to collect with the sale of these assets of drug trafficking, 91 million in 2021, 124 million in 2021, 360 million. In 2021, let me clarify, 360 million in 2021, 134 million in 2020. Our secretariat started having jurisdiction over other types of assets. Assets not only from drug trafficking, assets related to money laundering activities as well, for example. And here, Professor Gerardo La Vega, representative of Mexico, mentioned the importance of this administration, or this management, rather. And regardless of this numbers, these statistics. Today, we have sold more than 120 airplanes, more than 120 luxury homes, a hotel, which is on the left-hand side, is a hotel in Florida. That was a result of money laundering in the state of Mato Grosso, Brazil. And the criminal was sentenced. He had a hotel in Florida. The hotel was sold for $37 million last year. Of course, this was as a result of money laundering in Brazil. We have these emeralds worth more than $180 million. And we are working now to sell and repatriate those resources, those funds to Brazil. Hotels, gasoline stations, luxury vehicles. Last year, we seized 51 gasoline stations. And right now, we are managing the sale of those gasoline stations. Speaking of partnerships, we have an association, a partnership with Colombia, the National Secretariat of Drug Policies with the Ministry of Justice. Reached an agreement of cooperation with Colombia in 2020 for exchanging information and exchanging best practices. Next slide, please. Now, reaching the end, I'll be very brief. Some of the resources and funds collected by our secretariat. We have a National Fund of Drug Policy, and these resources that come in from assets seized are reinvested in prevention as well as in the fight against drugs. We call it the virtuous cycle. In Brazil, we have prevention applied by the Secretariat of Prevention with the Citizens Ministry and the application of more than 10,000 points for receiving therapy. And drug consumers can receive this therapy. These points are situated throughout the country with the police. And we have various other projects, some for training, the Minerva project to train experts about drug trafficking. We will train and purchase laboratory equipment for toxicology. More than 2,000 members of our authorities have already been trained. We have another project which is for the highways to install equipment that can detect the use of psychoactive substances in transit. A project called Cloacina, which is a project that, via the collection of pipes of the sewers, they collect and analyze the water to analyze the types of drugs and quantities that are being consumed per region. And that's allowing us to analyze drug consumption, but also to identify laboratories. And this project has been translated to Spanish. More than 5,000 professionals are participating in that course. Next slide. Brazil has this focus on decapitalizing criminal organizations and seizing their assets. And it's been a huge success for criminal justice. As quoted here by the president of the Supreme Court of Justice in Panama, criminal justice will take this money, these funds from the criminal organizations, and reinvest them in the fight against said organizations. Last year, the equivalent of approximately $204 million of assets that were taken from criminal organizations. Next slide, please. Also, in Brazil, with the support of the UNODC and the UNDP, we created a Center of Excellence for investigation related to drug crimes. And this is an innovative cooperation based on successful experiences of the UNODC with the Center of Excellence of Mexico, South Korea, a Center of of Excellence analyzing the trends and threats related to drug trafficking, transnational organized crime to guide our public policies, always based on evidence. Always evidence-based. And we already had a first edition of an internal newsletter published by the Center of Excellence about seizing assets and disarming and decapitalizing organized crime. We also had another one related to the adaptation and evolution of organized crime during the pandemic. We are developing another aspect together with Colombia on this project, which is focused on the cost of how they print drugs. And finally, to talk about the early warning system created and implemented in Brazil after Resolution 5 of August 3 of 2021. It's very new, very recent, created by the Brazilian federal government with the purpose of collecting and producing data and information about new drugs through monitoring, detection, assessment, and response to social threats and threats to public health. For the developing knowledge about the chemical components of this system. Thank you very, very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bellora. We'd like to thank our distinguished panelists for each of their valuable presentations. Next, we will continue with the comments and presentations from the international delegations. We would like to thank especially those that are following us in person to be please limit it to 3 minutes. Limit your presentations to 3 minutes. First, a recorded message by Mr. Cesar Rodrigo Landa, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Peru. Mr. Ivan Duque Marque, President of the Republic of Colombia. Madam Martha Lucia Ramirez, Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia. Madam Gada Vali, Executive Secretary of the UNODC. Madam Misters and Madams Ministers of Foreign Affairs, the pandemic has shown the need to reinforce multilateral cooperation in order to confront international threats and renew our progress. I would like to thank the Madam Minister of Foreign Affairs for this invitation to participate in the launch of the strategic vision of the UNODC in Latin America and Caribbean 2022-2025 that Peru fully supports. I would like to highlight the UNODC's support in our fight against the global problem of drugs in order to have peaceful and equal and fair societies. Next, I will address the first point, the fight against corruption, drug trafficking, transnational organized crime, prevention of crimes, and criminal justice. With our commitment to fight against corruption, Peru fights both in the hemisphere as well as globally against this scourge. In 2018, the 8th Summit of the Americas, we promoted democratic governance for the region in the fight against corruption. And we held an extraordinary assembly in 2021, in December to be specifically, in our fight against corruption, a resolution to monitor the implementation of what was agreed upon in UNODC'S 2021. Supporting bilateral and multilateral cooperation between the states most affected by the scourge of drugs with a broad and comprehensive vision. We share with the international community the concerns about the harms of drug consumption, the harms generated on our societies, including effect on our security. For that, we need to provide an effective response based on the principle of shared responsibility, complementing the political declaration of 2019 And the final document, UNGAS 2016 instrument that has been reinforced mutually and Peru supports. We also consider that cooperation and technical assistance provided by UNODC are critical. For that, I would like to highlight our participation since 2016 in the Global Program of Container Control, which has reinforced our portuary capabilities in the fight against illegal trafficking. Also, from 2000, Peru has implemented the comprehensive monitoring system of illegal crops, for which we provided technical assistance, which I greatly appreciate. Ladies and gentlemen, the fight against organized transnational crime has reached a magnitude that has affected almost all aspects of society with severe implications, including our political and economic status. It's a case with cyber crimes. The digital space has become a key area for technological domain in which many challenges coexist. As a consequence, Peru would like to support the process supported by the United Nations to create an international convention in the fight against the use of technologies, information technologies.
With the digitization on one side, the inclusion of the closure of this digital gaps, and also the implementation of this reliable system and safe for all of us. Now, this multilateral existence systems, we have created a multi-sectoral group to examine this implementation of the United Nations for the cross-national, and will strengthen the national capabilities through the exchange of good practices and the identification of the necessities and in this matter. And we also highlight the importance to implement the solution of this United Nations Security Council implementation of 1482 for 2019 that addresses the link with the organized crime and terrorism. With the fourth prioritization, we have the criminal justice in Peru. We consider that the strategical view of this PNUD will give us some achievements, and the implementation of this agreements of the Kyoto Accord adapted in the fourth National Congress in the United Nations. They have the promotion of the strengthening of the justice power and the implementation and fight against the environmental crimes as well. I would like to complement our commitment in our region through a flexible focus that will have the establishment of partnerships among countries, fostering the creation of technical capabilities and optimizing the work of our forces for the people, especially those who are vulnerable and those who are in our borderlines.
Vamos con el mensaje pregrabado.
We will continue with the pre-recorded message from the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Argentina, Pablo de Tamanti. I would like to convey all our greetings in behalf of Argentina to all our people in our Colombia, and the strategical implementation of the Latin American Caribbean vision for 2022-2025 in the station and multi-sectoral consultations that will allow us to attend the needs and priorities of the region with the optimization of the presence of UNODC in our countries. We will contribute the peace and security to create equity, justice, and fair. The impunity that allows to have the communication and the new technologies, especially the multinational networks, has made this very important to unify our efforts when we're going to fight the organized international crimes. And that's why the transfers of all this information, exchange of experiences is fundamental at the moment we're facing these common grounds and to look for efficient things in the political and justice view. And this, we have the strategical vision, our concrete view, so our region can strengthen our south-to-south strategies and have progress. And the transversal, the fundamental view, like human rights, the in gender, and all the contributions the organizations can have in the civil society, in the academia, and the private sector in Argentina. We have cooperated historically with all the multilateral bodies against the fight for drug crimes and everything linked to this. And we have balanced focus in the safe public health and human rights as well in regards to all these modalities of transnational organized crimes like human trafficking, the trafficking of migrants, and also small weapons. It's Argentina has created a lot of tools to prevent this, to analyze them, and to fight them. As an example of this, in 2021, as part of the Argentina presidency of the Sixth Authority meeting for all this human trafficking and migrants trafficking, we created a platform for this human trafficking that counts with Argentinian funds. And last year, we created an exchange of information for the disarm of public. Of the people here in Argentina and with the regional making us double our efforts in the deceleration of economy and all the lockdowns that we had in COVID-19 has fertilized all the grounds for all the manifestation, and we have observed the vulnerability of the most weakest groups, and we have seen the evidence of all the weaknesses of the structures that exist in these societies, and we have to count with all these public policies that have been oriented towards the social life of our people and so they can have more equality. With this horizons, we would like to congratulate ONUC and the Colombian government for the strategical efforts for the against the threats in the against the human life that would be very useful to face all these challenges that we have in the region. We would like to thank the Republic of Argentina for the video they have sent and their greetings. We will continue with the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Guatemala, Eduardo Enrique Hernandez. He is accompanying us directly in a Go ahead, Dr. Hernandez. We're listening to you. Go ahead. We can hear you. Good morning to all. In behalf of the Guatemala Republic's government and representation of the Foreign Affairs Minister of the Republic of Dr. Mario Burgero Flores, who just assumed the position, is an honor to direct myself to you in this discussion space. Please allow me to begin sending some congratulations to the government of Colombia for the launching of the strategic vision of the UNODC 2020 for Latin America and the Caribbean 2022-2025. Even though we are not personally gathered there with you, we are gathered by the common grounds to see all the problems that all our countries are facing as organized transnational crime, the world problems that we have with drugs and corruption, and the strengthening of the prevention of the criminal justice system. The launching of the strategic vision is carried out in a very important moment, sharing the same challenges as it is to face all crimes in a more complex landscape given to the COVID-19 pandemic, that with the new modalities that have been adapted by these criminal groups to carry out their criminal actions, just as the increase of the use of the information technologies and communication technologies with criminal purposes. Guatemala has centered their efforts so they can comply with all the commitments that we have with the fight against transnational crimes and with other aspects in this and within the general government policies for 2020-2024. President of the Republic, Alejandro Yamatilla Falla, has prioritized in a strong way to fight all the common crimes and organized crimes, actions that have carried out all the capability being carried out with all the capabilities of the state. In the same way, we're working together with the three existing conventions in matters of the international drug fight, with the purpose to address the world problem with drugs that in an effective way, especially looking at all the enforced and legislations and the respect of our legislation. We consider that this is indispensable, and it's very important to carry out all the fight against crimes and all the violence that we are having cross borders, focusing on the regional accords so we can fight drug trafficking and other problems around it, like trafficking of migrants, of humans, and weapons that will no doubt hurt and our peace in international level. I would like to share with you, with all this, that our Congress of our Republic approved some legislations to strengthen all the punishments for the trafficking of people, of humans, and that's what we are mentioning this, so our other countries in our region can sum themselves to all our and to share all the information that we have around these crimes that affect so many families in the world. Guatemala will always act with firmness, as we have been doing, to strengthen and modernize the justice grounds and to reach one of these safe grounds is one of the main demands of our people in Guatemala. This is the reason why we're strengthening our view in the capabilities of response. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the UNODC office for the thematic presentations in the four areas of strategical investment. Count with a partner, as Guatemala is a strategical partner to carry out joint plans to strengthen all the capabilities of our states through the implementations of a penal criminal justice strategies and all the things that put in danger the life of all our people. And to wrap this up, I would like to thank the government of the Republic of Colombia for the celebration of this event, our country, friendly country and partner of Guatemala. Thank you very much, Mr. Hernandez, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Guatemala. We would like to also thank all the panelists that are pending international, so reduce their interventions to a 3-minute lapse so we can continue with the transmission and the times that we have established. We would like to continue with Vice Minister of Multilateral and Cooperation of the Republic of Panama, Ana Mirza Castro. Thank you. Good morning. Excellence Ivan Duque, President of the Republic of Colombia, Excellence Marta Lucia Ramirez, Vice President and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Gadawali, the Executive Chief of the United Nations of the UNODC office, ladies and gentlemen, in behalf of our Chancellor Larinez, we would like to thank Colombia and the UNODC office for the invitation to participate in this. It is of incredible importance to fight of all the fight that we're having against corruption and economical crimes, the fight against organized transnational crimes, the strengthening of the prevention of crimes and penal and criminal justice, and also the fight against drugs. In this sense, I would like to thank UNODC and all the experts of different countries and different themes, and take this with optimism, the Latin American and Caribbean strategies for 2022 and 2025. I'm a firm believer that things that we're implementing around the world is vital for the development of the region, and this is why we recognize the work that's been developed by the UNODC office, which regional office for Central America and the Caribbean has their headquarters in Panama. We have created the opportunity to exchange good and best practices to promote the cooperation and improve our cooperation among our countries through trainings and legislations assistance. We are fostering transparency policies and we're continuing to work with the reforms of anti-corruption laws, the optimization of processes and other actions blocked together with our Northern government. We are committed with the international justice and the Convention of the United Nations against corruption, just as our will and responsibility to continue to have all our training and updating the new international policies in this topic, which UNODC have played the key role here, and through the assistance that we have allocated some assets, the seizure of bank accounts and other assets and information that we have had of migrants and trade, and the fight against transnational organized crime. Truth is that the support of UNODC through the trainings and workshops have allowed us to have development of some programs that we can view an important progress, reaffirming the commitment that we have as a country to fight against all the crimes against these and fight against all these capitals and organized crimes. Ever since 2015 to 2021, the public minister of Panama has achieved to have seize 134 million dollars of illicit money. In the same sense, we have recovered illicit access for above 255 million dollars. We have seized uh, assets for more than $35 million, it being relevant. With all this investigation work, we have achieved to recover more than $400 million. It is precise to say that the regional office of the UNODC for Central America and the Caribbean offers help to all our authority bodies in this accusational policies through initiatives specialized that to strengthen the national capabilities. In the global program framework against crime of UNODC, we have carried out some trainings directed for the judicial officers and other governmental offices in purpose to create synergies in the coordination and fight against these crimes. In the product of the pandemic has increased and
In the fight against drugs plays a key role. Well, production plays a key role. Our status as a gateway or transit country is also important to keep in mind. For that reason, we are constantly working on designing, implementing, and coordinating policies, national policies in this regard. I would like to wrap up my presentation acknowledging the work of the UNODC in developing this strategic vision for LATAM and the Caribbean 2022-2025. We would like to thank the support provided in helping us design priority strategies via comprehensive programs allowing us to reinforce the state's institution in the fight against drug trafficking, corruption, money laundering, and organized crime. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Vice Minister of Multilateral Affairs of Panama. We will continue with Mr. Marcelo Escapini, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Paraguay. Good afternoon. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate the Colombian government for organizing this key event. Madam Vice President, to Mr. President, thank you very much for being our host. The Republic of Paraguay has reaffirmed its international commitment to fight against corruption, money laundering, transnational organized crime, and the global problem of drugs. Mainly because these are problems that impact our societies, affecting us all equally, and at the end of the day affects the state, democracy, and rule of law. As such, we are committed to this work, and we would like to thank UNODC for the support with which we collaborate closely to reinforce our national capabilities in the fight against these crimes. And we expect to continue reinforcing our cooperation and coordination of public policies, highlighting the special interest that our country has, Paraguay, in these regards. Referencing the relevance that our country has for this strategic vision. Just a few days ago, the President of the Republic reiterated the commitment of our government in the fight against the global problem of drugs and transnational organized crime. In the third summit of Sud, in which Paraguay had the presidency of this sub-regional forum, to continue with the prior work that had already been conducted and was done very well by the Colombian government in issues related to security, in which we talked about the sectoral plan of sectoral and fight against crime, the fight against these crimes requires us to prioritize them both internally as well as with international competent authorities. We are following the principles of shared responsibility, and we acknowledge that through joint actions between states and international cooperation, we can mitigate the harmful effects of these illicit activities in our territories. And this year, esteemed and respected Vice President, distinguished participants, Paraguay will have an important challenge. Well, of course, we will preside over 2 international forums. In addition to having the presidency of Prosur, we will also have the presidency of Mercosur, a mechanism of international cooperation between CELAC and the European Union, as well as the vice presidency of the Inter-American Commission for the Control of Drugs, CCAD. This places us at the center of all action, and Paraguay will do its best to successfully preside over these forums. The global problem of drugs cannot be treated by just focusing on drug prevention, but it's clearly related on attacking the roots of the problem. As such, the fight against poverty, inequality are core actions for any of our states. With this said, we will review with the other member states of these 2 blocks that I mentioned previously joint actions to ensure or to analyze the links between development and security, aligned with the policies adopted in the framework of the strategic vision for our region, which was presented today so clearly by the representatives of UNODC. In Paraguay, we celebrate, as I mentioned before, the launch of this strategic vision given today as testimony of the relevance that this office has in our region. And we expect it to contribute, and we contribute so that we can find answers to these challenges we are confronting together, as well as by solidifying the relationships between our nations and our peoples. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Vice Minister Scapini from Paraguay. With us in person is Mr. Ambassador of the Republic of Ecuador in Colombia, Rafael Paredes, whom will speak to you from the podium. Thank you very much. My esteemed respect to the President, Madam Vice President, a warm greeting to Mrs. Garawali, Executive Secretary of UNODC, ambassadors, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies on behalf of the Undersecretary of Multilateral Affairs, which due to an unforeseen circumstance could not participate to this video conference as was foreseen. On behalf of the Ecuadorian government, I would like to extend my thanks to the government of the Republic of Colombia and the UNODC for this invitation. Allow me to participate in this launch of the strategic vision of the UNODC for LATAM and the Caribbean. First of all, I would like to express my acknowledgement for the work and consultations carried out with the member states and multilateral organizations, civil society, the private sector, and other stakeholders for formulating this strategic vision, which will allow us to continue fighting against drug trafficking, organized crime, and corruption. We are pleased to see that Ecuadorian institutions contributed and supported this process. For Ecuador, it is indispensable to cooperate and receive technical assistance from UNODC, with which we have signed on 2 MOUs for transparency and the fight against corruption, and on addressing the socio-economic phenomenon of drug consumption, as well as the advisory that the presidency of the Republic of Ecuador receives from UNODC in implementing measures to prevent and fight against corruption, as well as to promote public and efficient public administration in the framework of Agenda 2030 of the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. We would like to congratulate the extension regionally of the UNODC office in Colombia, in Bogota, and we place our trust, or we trust that soon programs will be implemented so that we can benefit from them, and that hopefully the border areas of our countries can be prioritized in order to fight against the threats and criminal activities with the by promoting and supporting those border communities that are amidst poverty and inequality. We are sure that with the implementation of the 4 investment or priority areas of the strategic vision, we will be able to find answers to the current challenges and threats affecting our citizens' safety, allowing us to build societies in peace, having a inclusive policy, and allowing us to achieve democratic stability. The Ecuadorian government and its institutions have a high commitment in participating in plans and projects geared towards fighting against drug trafficking. As such, the UNODC will always have with Ecuador a partner in the implementation of this strategic vision 2022-2025. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Paredes. From the Republic of Chile, live with us, the Director of National Security, Francisco Devia, virtually, but live. Thank you very much. Here in Santiago de Chile, on behalf of our government, we would like to thank the organization Colombia for this launch of the strategic vision of the UNODC for Latin America and the Caribbean 2022-2025. We have realized that with this health crisis, a new series of challenges have been presented, and President Duque mentioned them. We're talking about cyber crimes, environmental crimes, and we'd also like to add the following. Corruption also went up in the health sector with medical products. For that reason, it's key that the UNODC shares this new strategic vision that has been launched today, which has 4 priority areas, which we have listened to here with my colleague. We have all carefully been listening to the presentation. First of all, I will talk about transnational organized crime. We'd like to say that last year, the drug trafficking report from the Attorney General's office showed that in Chile we are having for the first time Mexican cartels, and that same report mentioned that penitentiary control is highly risky. The control of the jails. These 2 negative aspects we would like to counter with 2 announcements from our government, in the sense that firstly, we're going to create a Ministry of Public Security, which will be geared towards preventing and controlling these types of organizations, like transnational organized crime. Another measure to fight against cyber crimes, we will present a bill to create the National Cybersecurity Agency. On the other hand, the UNODC, we expect this year to sign a MOU for the program of containers control that a previous speaker mentioned early. And also, in regards to this strategic vision, is the global drug problem. In the report from 2021, last year, The report indicated that there are more than 75 million individuals consuming drugs, equivalent to 7% of the population. Unfortunately, in our region, our country has one of the highest indexes of drug consumption for cocaine and heroin. For that reason, we're creating a unit for drug control called the National Plan Choose to Live Without Drugs, which copies the program from Iceland, but of course adapted to Chile. And last year, we also published the National Drug Strategy 2021-2030. Why? For a simple reason, for what I just mentioned recently. We are facing a problem of high levels of consumption, of drug consumption. Chile has been perceived as a country with a low index of corruption. As a matter of fact, we are in ranking 27th. After Uruguay, we are in the second place in the region. Now, what happens? A little while ago, the Anti-Corruption Alliance, we had a seminar, and unfortunately, it's held internationally. Today, 50% of the municipalities in our country have been reported for corruption. As such, we are very interested in fighting against this crime.
And for this, we made part of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, the UNCAT, receiving all the UNODC support in these matters. And the fourth area and the last one of this agenda of the strategy launching in crimes, we count with a secretariat in regards to crime that carry out the work with the PB, and also the prosecutor office is carrying out prevention work, and also consider something that we require an intelligent state system that has to be modern and efficient. When this intelligence in state matters, it is very difficult to prevent crime. And with this, I will wrap up. It's evident that all the criminal justice systems in the region are very old, and inmate costs $1,000, and this is in the Chile. Other foundations, around $300. They say that it will be the cost to keep somebody in prison. It's not just overpopulated, but also the reinsertion. And I would like UNODC to send us out the report on the jails for it to be in Spanish. We had to read it in English, but we don't have these problems. But some of the agencies that we sent this to, they do not have any translation. So as a country, we only can thank this initiative, and we are committed with UNODC as well as with the Colombian government. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Devia, the Director of International Security from the Republic of Chile. I would like to continue with Gustavo Alves, Director of Multilateral Affairs of the Uruguayan Republic, that is accompanies directly in a virtual way. Thank you very much. Before anything, I would like to thank the authorities in the Republic of Colombia, for especially the President Ivan Duque and Vice President and Foreign Affairs Minister Marta Lucia Ramirez. I would also like to thank all the authorities of the UNODC for the presentations and the launching of the strategic vision of UNODC 2022-2025. The strategic vision that has been developed to support the member states in the region, addressing all the challenges that they face according to the mandate of the 2030 Agenda for the Sustainable Development. In this sense, it is very important to highlight that the strategic vision has been designed by UNODC in the measures of everything that has been presented in the region and everything that's highlighted, all the high levels of inequality, with all those services, inequality of gender and opportunities that have been limited for youth, the high levels of violence and corruption perception impunity and unburnability of all the environmental assets. In this framework, we have prioritized investment to fight corruption and economical crimes, fighting organized transnational crimes, and the prevention of crimes and the criminal justice and addressing the world problem with drugs. At the same time, we have highlighted the announcement of the UNODC to increase their presence in Latin American countries that have requiring additional resources through the exploration of diverse alternatives as the identification of a focal point in the Resident Coordination Office of the United Nations so they can support the analysis and orientation of the UNODC. Of course, Uruguay is supporting all the work of the UNODC, but which grants all the importance of the multilateralism and the key role of the United Nations supporting all the international conventions in the drugs and criminal matters as those multilateral global instances as well as the regional ones for the prevention of crimes and criminal justice and the fight against the problem with drugs around the world and human rights as well. In the UNODC work framework, Uruguay has kept an active participation in the meetings and negotiation instances and around drugs and the follow-up of all the General Assembly of the United Nations 2016 and the Declaration of the World Problems with Drugs of 2019. The crime, uh, criminal justice prevention, and of the United Nations for to fight corruption. Uruguay have kept a dialogue with different authorities, which have allowed us to strengthen the technical assistance of the UNODC in topics like the prevention of the use of drugs, the migration traffic, and criminal justice, crime, just weapons, and traffic of migrants and humans, and against terrorism and crimes against wildlife. Uruguay acknowledges all the efforts that UNODC and offers them all the support, including the capabilities and development of manuals and 10 tools, the increase of exchange of information and the international cooperation among the states and other relevant key players based on the scientific evidence. In the same manner, Uruguay welcomes the UNODC decision to work supporting the coordinated states that are coordinated and all the regional international forums that and all this strategical vision of 2022-2025 is a very good step that we're taking in this sense, and we're very satisfied with the event that we have had today. Thank you very much, Alvarez, for the multilateral. The same way, we are accompanied by Lord D, the Secretariat of the Anti-Narcotics and the Application of Laws. And Dr. Paul, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Excellencies and colleagues. Thank you, Executive Director Wally, for the opportunity to participate today. It is an honor to address this group of distinguished leaders. The U.S. Department of State's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs congratulates UNODC on the launch of its strategic vision for Latin America and the Caribbean. The strategy includes a much-needed focus on pressing challenges such as precursor chemicals and the complex drivers of irregular migration, which my government continues to grapple with. The criminal threats we face as an international community are interrelated, know no borders, and are grave and complex. This has become even more clear over the past 2 years in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. UNODC is an invaluable global thought leader in our efforts to advance a worldwide offense against these threats. We commend UNODC's strategic vision for Latin America and the Caribbean as it proposes pragmatic and innovative approaches to tackling today's challenges together as an international community. UNODC's technical assistance programming fosters the change we seek in the areas of crime, illegal drugs, and instability in Latin America and the Caribbean. The United States is proud to partner with UNODC as a leading donor, providing approximately $32 million to support such programming in the region. On illegal drugs, UNODC plays a major role in fighting the global opioid crisis. UNODC's regional training on the safe handling of synthetic opioids enhances confidence among officers in their ability to detect synthetic opioids while protecting themselves and their colleagues. Further, UNODC's world-renowned container control program makes significant strides in increasing drug interdiction and detection at key points. UNODC's expertise extends beyond land borders, though. As we see drug traffickers moving their illicit transactions online, UNODC is paving the way to counter the use of online platforms and virtual assets to facilitate trafficking in synthetics and their precursors. Many of these cyber best practices are shared with all member states through the UN Toolkit on Synthetic Drugs, which provides practical guidance towards identifying comprehensive solutions to the threats posed by synthetic drugs. UNODC is also implementing essential programming to combat maritime criminal activity related to narcotics and firearms trafficking, human trafficking, environmental crimes, and illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in the hemisphere. In the Caribbean, where the threats from transnational criminal organizations continue to grow, INL supports a UNODC project to train regional prosecutors to address transnational maritime crime. INL also funds a project to increase maritime intelligence and operational cooperation between key partners in the region, like the Dominican Republic and Jamaica. Such innovative programming continues to position UNODC as a leader steering the world towards positive change. On the public health side, UNODC leads global efforts to address substance use disorders through the creation of humane and evidence-based drug use prevention, treatment, and recovery services. UNODC implements a variety of regional public health programs focused on drug use, treatment interventions, as well as those related to decreasing drug use and behavioral problems in children. Finally, we are pleased to see evidence-based technical assistance, along with continued data collection and analysis, play a prominent role in UNODC's strategic vision. Data collection has come a long way, but applying and integrating the data remains difficult. We applaud UNODC's efforts to use new technologies like machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms to assist in analyzing data and incorporating it into best practices. We encourage donors to redouble efforts to support UNODC's innovative research initiatives to ensure our international policies in these important areas are data-driven. Although each country bears individual responsibility to implement its obligations under the drug control, anti-crime, and corruption treaties, our nations are strongest when we act collectively. President Biden has made it clear that the United States stands ready to be your partner in solidarity and support and mutual respect, and we must all work together to advance our shared vision of a better future, which includes peace and security for all our citizens. UNODC's new strategic vision for Latin America and the Caribbean provides an excellent roadmap for such collaboration. Executive Director Wally and her team should be proud of the framework they have created. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. We appreciate your message. Finalmente, damos paso a la intervención del señor
I'd like to give the way to Dr. Pierre Lepac intervention, head of the UNODC office that would do the Thank you. Good afternoon. A special thanks to the President of the Republic and Vice President and the Minister of Foreign Affairs for their hospitality and their interest in the strategic UNODC mission for Latin America and the Caribbean. In this sense, I would like to greet with gratitude our Vice President and our Foreign Affairs Minister and all the delegates of the region that are participating in the launching of this event. I would also like to thank the President who accompanied us in this event for his supportive messages and his commitment to support the strategic vision of the UNODC in the region. Also, I would like to thank and send my gratitude as the new director of the UNODC office in the region and for the Andean region and the South Cone, our chief executive Waragali for this.
Executive Director Mrs. Wally for this strategic vision. And finally, greetings to the diplomatic team and my colleagues of the UN system in Colombia. And also everyone following us virtually via YouTube for this momentous event that will framework the future of the region with its purpose of building more peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable societies. After hearing the presentations of our keynote speakers and the panel members, allow me to, I'll be very brief, I promise, just share a few conclusions, points which I believe were very important, keywords. For example, the need to support our youth so that them and their countries in Latin America and Caribbean will have a better future. Working at a regional level and having a cross-cutting transversal policy for these types of crimes will change things. International cooperation is absolutely critical for this aspect to fight not only against corruption, but all these types of crimes. Crimes from the past, and also new emerging crimes like cyber crimes and environmental crimes. I believe that this vision will make a change. There's a focus on corruption and in general the 4 priority areas. I believe a key word that was mentioned greatly was inequality. We're not only going to focus on corruption, but that aspect is cross-cutting to the 4 priority areas. And to finally reach a sanction, a fine, some form of punishment after due process, we need to send a strong political message, and we have to act strongly via national cooperation between the various entities, but also international. And us, as UNODC, can contribute in that regard. That must be done via an early detection, as early as possible, of these problems. Problems that are occurring today in country A will impact country B tomorrow. So we need to work in a more proactive fashion in this fight in order to disassemble, to take apart not only national criminal organizations, but also international criminal organizations, so that we can have a strong criminal justice system that is proactive and obviously protecting the human basic rights of our citizens. That is absolutely at the core of our work in the UN, and us in UNODC working hand in hand with all of you also work on the new chemical drugs. I would like to insist on this aspect, which with fentanyl, which today is affecting countries like Canada, the USA, but tomorrow, perhaps in 6 months, 2 years, who knows, they will come here to Colombia, they will come to the region, and will have a strong impact on this region. All of that will be addressed by our strategy. Now we need to implement said strategy together with the countries, the member states, and the country office implement this regional strategy, which for me is an example of cooperation that in an articulated fashion can provide effective responses to the challenges the region is facing and renew the regional and global partnership that we have as a key focus will be the Agenda 2030. Thank you to all of you for your attention and for supporting us in these efforts. Thank you very much, representative of the UNODC in Colombia. We have now finalized this event. We would like to express special thanks to the Executive Director Gala Wali for being with us today, and also Madam Vice President and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Colombia, Minister of Multilateral Affairs, whom is also with us, Maria Camila Londoño, as well as the distinguished panelists and guests. May you have an excellent day.